As much as I complain about Disney, I'm still a fan of the company. I grew up watching the animated films, mesmerized by the art. Once I acquired the movies on VHS and DVD, I was able to slow down certain scenes to see the progression of each frame and gained an appreciation for the animation process. Did you know 1 minute of animation contains 1,440 frames, and an hour and a half film can contain nearly 130,000? Sometimes while scrutinizing the frames, I, as well as other people, caught sight of quick visual gags intentionally left by animators. Usually they were run-of-the-mill hidden Mickeys, but occasionally we were treated to characters from other Disney films. With such a potential plethora of hidden gems, countless viewers began hunting Disney Easter eggs hidden amongst each movie's frames, and a treasury of visual nods was soon discovered. The Easter eggs had to be taken at face value. They didn't make any sense, other than being a reward for those quick enough to see them. For example, Belle is shown walking through Renaissance Paris in The Hunchback of Notre Dame, 300 years before she was born. This occurrence isn't limited to their movies either. It shows up in the theme parks too. In the last few years, though, many are subscribing to the notion that such Easter eggs are undeniable proof that the flicks share one connected universe, or Disneyverse. Many times, the laws of space, time, and logic are ignored to make the theories work. And this idea isn't limited to a few fans. There are hundreds of thousands, maybe millions, who try finding ways to make every Easter egg hold deeper significance. Sometimes theories are created without an Easter egg's presence. There are posts all over the internet that claim Tarzan is Elsa's long-lost little brother, or that Aladdin takes place in a post-apocalyptic future based on the genie's 20th century lingo and references. These discussions are lengthy and intense, taking into account every minor element, trying to solve a puzzle that, frankly, doesn't exist. So I'm going to expose a few of the more popular theories and explain why they're invalid. Let's start with 1997's Hercules. Fans claim the shooting star during the song Go the Distance is in fact Aladdin and Jasmine flying on the magic carpet. There are two reasons why this is false. One, the carpet didn't glow, so there's no way it could create an illumination like that, unless it's re-entering Earth's atmosphere and burning up to dust. Two, the legend of Hercules takes place 3,300 years ago, while Aladdin is set 800 years ago. Speaking of Aladdin, there's now speculation that the movie takes place in the future, due to Genie peppering his speech and actions with modern-day references. While it's true that Genie does show Aladdin iconic images synonymous with the 20th century, we have to remember that Robin Williams regularly went off script while recording and ad-libbed a great deal of his Genie lines, and the animators drew what matched the dialogue. Allegedly, the evil queen from Snow White escaped at the end of the film and became Tangled's Mother Gothel. But this too has several points that contradict it. One, the queen's death, while off-screen, was inferred when the pair of vultures flew down to her after the boulder fell on her. Had she escaped death, they wouldn't have flown down. Two, Gothel looks and acts nothing like the queen. Gothel's hair is curly, while the queen's is straight. The queen has an oval-shaped face, whereas Gothel's is heart-shaped. Gothel makes wisecracks and quick jokes, but the queen is always serious and stern. And had the queen survived after fleeing, she would have returned to her castle and made an antidote to the aging potion. Why would she have given up the throne? Lastly, Mother Gothel, having lived for centuries, wears a blio dress, a garment worn by women between the 11th and 13th centuries, thus indicating she was originally young during that time. Snow White takes place around 1540 AD. And now I must address my biggest pet peeve about the supposed Disneyverse, Frozen's connection. Frozen seems to be at the center of the so-called Disneyverse, and the results of trying to link it to other Disney animated films range from physically impossible to just odd. Before I dissect these theories, let me establish the dates and location of the films that are claimed to have a Frozen connection. Frozen is set in the fictional country of Arendelle, but for simplicity's sake, we'll list it as Norway, circa 1840. The date is listed in the Art of Frozen art book. Tangled is set in the fictional kingdom of Corona, we'll say Austria, and based on the Renaissance clothing styles throughout the movie, in the 1500s. Although Mozart had been mentioned, there was no hints of Georgian style. But hold on, you're probably thinking, if Tangled set in the 1500s, why did we see The Little Mermaid book from 1837 and Beauty and the Beast from 1740 in the library? Being as the Mermaid book shows the Disney movie poster, it's clearly an Easter egg. The next movie is The Little Mermaid. Despite the story being written in Denmark, the Disney version gives it a tropical twist by setting it in Danish West Indies. A few clues point to the location. The tropical flora and fauna, like flamingos, palm trees, manta rays, and blowfish. In the song Under the Sea, Sebastian sings, "When the sardines begin the Begin." The Begin is a dance that originated on the Caribbean islands of Guadeloupe and Martinique. Since the original story is Danish, chances are Disney set it on St. Croix, which was the closest Danish colony to Guadeloupe and Martinique. Additionally, one of Eric's crewmen on the ship warns them of the incoming hurricane. Hurricanes are in tropic regions, like the Caribbean, not the chilling North Sea of Denmark. And as for time period, Grimsby's outfit, Louis' shoes, and Ariel's clothes point to 1831. And Tarzan's setting is Gabon, Africa. Jane's swagged-up skirts and bustle style was prevalent in the 1880s, though the shortened length was a girl's fashion in 1887, meaning she was wearing a child's dress. So now that the eras and locations have been established, it's time to debunk the Frozen theories. One idea suggests Anna and Elsa's parents, the King and Queen of Arendelle, journeyed to Rapunzel and Flynn's wedding in Corona/Austria, but their boat drifted and sank near the coast of Africa, where they lived with their baby boy, Tarzan. And their ship is the same sunken one Ariel explored. This theory has so many flaws. Lord and Lady Greystoke, John and Alice, were aristocrats from England, and they had a young son, John Clayton Greystoke, aka Tarzan, who they took on a boat trip to equatorial Africa in the film. Unfortunately, the boat caught fire and sank, leaving the family stranded in Gabon around 1870. Lord and Lady Greystoke can't be Anna and Elsa's parents because 1. The King and Queen perished in 1837, 2. John, Alice, and John Jr. had a photograph of themselves taken while they were in England. When the King and Queen left, they didn't take a baby, and no, the Queen didn't give birth on the ship. Why do I say this? Simple. They were only going to be gone for 2 weeks. Even if she carried out her entire pregnancy on the drifting ship, they only had food and water for 14 days. It would have taken them months to reach Gabon. And speaking of drifting, if they were going to Austria, how did they manage to drift 6,000 miles and pass 20 countries without stopping for help? Where was the crew? Even if they had abandoned ship, didn't the king, the ruler of a coastal kingdom like Arendelle, have any nautical experience and know how to steer a ship? 3. John and Alice decorated their treehouse with a British flag. Why would the Arendelle rulers do that? 4. England is a real country, while Arendelle is fictional. So the two families can't be in the same universe, let alone be the same people. 5. The king and queen look nothing like the Greystokes, and while on the subject of this photograph, Lord Greystoke is wearing a necktie. Men didn't start wearing neckties until the 1860s, 23 years after the king and queen left. Frozen co-director Chris Buck suggested that the king and queen were going to a wedding and didn't die on the ship. Of course they didn't die on the ship. They died in the ocean. And if they were going to a wedding, why didn't they take the girls? That brings us to the next parts of this theory, the sunken ship. The Little Mermaid is set in the Caribbean, 6 years before the king and queen perished, so Ariel couldn't have explored their boat. Actually, let's look closely at the Arendelle ship, Tarzan's parent ship, and the sunken ship. These are 3 completely different vessels. The Arendelle one, with its square-rigged foremast and fore and afted-rigged mainmast and mizzenmast, is a barkentine. The Greystokes boat is also a barkentine, but it had 6 masts before it caught fire and sank. The Little Mermaid sunken ship is a carrack, a predecessor to the larger galleons. It has a tall stern castle, portholes, and flat stern. If you compare it to the king and queen ship, you could see the differences. While talking about Tarzan, let's look at another popular theory that makes no sense. Jane and Belle being related. The factors that make the 2 women related are their brown hair, proclivity for wearing yellow, and their ability to tame wild men. Oh, people are related if they wear similar colors? I guess that means Pooh is related to Gaston. And Belle didn't exactly choose that yellow ball gown of her own free will. It was a dress the beast provided to her while she was being held captive at his castle. But the most annoying proof that connects Belle and Jane? This tea set. Supposedly, Belle kept the tea sets after the curse on the beast was broken, and it was passed down the family to Jane. Really? The tea set was Mrs. Potts and her children while under the curse, but once the curse was lifted, the family regains their human forms, so Belle could not have acquired the tea set. The inclusion in Tarzan was simply an Easter egg, not a canon connection. A similar occurrence happened in Aladdin, in that we see a tiny beast figurine in the Sultan's toy collection. It doesn't mean the Sultan went forward in time 500 years, saw the beast, and made a toy of him back in Agrabah. It's just a fun thing the animators added. Supposedly, the Queen of Arendelle and the Queen of Corona are sisters, making Rapunzel, Anna, and Elsa cousins. And Rapunzel has supernatural healing powers, because Elsa has supernatural ice powers. So, why are the queens related? Because they have large eyes, small noses, and heart-shaped faces, like almost every other Disney woman? Judy Hopps has large eyes and a small nose. Does that mean she's related to them? Disney has a very strict formula when drawing most female characters, especially the princesses. Ever wonder why they all have huge eyes, tiny frames, round faces, petite hands, and feet? Is it because they're related? No, it's because Disney knows that it sells a fantasy, and to address the magical powers of the quote-unquote cousin Rapunzel, she only got the healing ability because her mother drank the flower elixir during labor. Had the mother not consumed the potion, Rapunzel wouldn't have been born with the blonde hair or healing powers. Which takes us to Rapunzel and Flynn being at Elsa's coronation. Yes, these characters are shown at the coronation, but again, the varying time periods would make it impossible for them to meet. And let's say they were at the party. Why would Rapunzel wear her regular princess dress to an important royal affair? Claims also say this woman in blue is either Cinderella or Aurora. Why? Can't a background character wear a specific color without being named a princess? She's not wearing Cinderella's gloves. and she doesn't have Aurora's long sleeves, so she can't be either woman. Why am I so intense on disproving these theories? Why not ignore them if I disagree? Simple, because the once irrelevant gags are now being seen as dogma that link characters together like an overblown fan fiction. From social media to news articles, these conjectures are now being spread and accepted without questioning. Who cares if the Arendelle King and Queen ship was a barkentine and the sunken ship was a carrack? They're both ships, so they're the same. Princesses who live centuries apart are now best friends. Disney has been including Easter eggs and hidden Mickeys for decades. There's not some convoluted secret behind them. Mickey, Donald, and Goofy were under the ocean at Triton's concert. Does that mean they could breathe magically underwater? Nemo is caught in a fishing net in Brother Bear, 10,000 years before he was taken by P. Sherman to 42 Wallaby Way. Pinocchio was in the Snuggly Duckling's rafters 300 years before Geppetto carved him. Scar was mauled to death by the hyenas, yet his hide was intact when Hercules wore it. An Olaf statue stood in San Francisco, and a wanted poster showed Hans's face. How could he still be alive? A Sully carving and Pizza Planet toy truck are in the Witch's Hut in Brave. The theory would rather say Boo from Monsters, Inc. went back to 1100 Scotland and became the witch, instead of just viewing the items as a joke that the animators included. Apparently, the red-haired mermaid in Neverland is Ariel's mother, Athena. How did she leave Neverland, travel through space to Earth, while going back in time? If all the characters live in one universe, why did Nani have a Mulan movie poster? That right there acknowledges Mulan is just a movie in Nani's universe. Even Kingdom Hearts, with its connected Disney worlds, isn't considered canon. Why must everything have a timeline and connected universe nowadays? Can't we just enjoy movies and games anymore without trying to link every little detail together in a convoluted web? Imagine if people started linking all novels together. Absurd, right? So what if the princesses aren't best friends? Or the genie's pop culture references don't make sense in 1200 AD? It doesn't change the fact that these are classic movies that have been enjoyed by millions and will be admired for generations to come. With each movie taking place in its own unique world, it allows it to stand strong and unique, with its own distinction. The next time you're watching a Disney animated film, if you notice an Easter egg, just chuckle and move on. I guarantee the inclusion is 99.9% inconsequential.